And a pleasure to be joined right now by Charles Payne, who is an author, journalist, Wall Street analyst. You also see him as the host of Making Money with Charles Payne on the Fox Business Channel. Charles, great to talk to you again. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks a lot. It's great to be back.
Thank you. Obviously, we're talking about Black History Month. And so just in general, from your perspective in the business realm, what is the state of Black-owned business in this country?
It's not great. It's not where, well, blanket, it's not great. I am hopeful with a lot of the younger generations, younger millennials, Gen Zers. I see them as real go-getters. I see them as having fewer hang-ups, fewer concerns about what may or may not be in their way. But there's still like the real serious issues of finance, of getting financing and those sort of things. And that, give me an example. I was just seeing where I live in New Jersey. So one of the congressmen out there who also happens to be named Payne, no relation, is making a big deal about the fact that I think something like 70 marijuana licenses have been granted in the state, and not one to Black-owned business, not one single one. For me, what bothers me is that whenever it's saying let's legalize it, part of the argument was this will create opportunities in such and such neighborhoods, right? So I see this kind of bait and switch stuff all the time. My stepson has a bait business. He's actually opening up his second store. So, it's an industry that's intriguing to me. And it's just amazing that the state didn't issue one license so there's some issues there. A lot of it, though, I think the financing for me is really what has to be improved a lot.
So what needs to be addressed then from big banks, from Wall Street, to really kind of open those doors even more?
They got to take a chance. I think your typical checklist is just not going to work, right? So, some of it is relational, who you went to school with, who you knew as a kid, all that stuff still plays a role in it. But I think the big problem is being able to look beyond perhaps like the resume, if you will, the look inside the heart and soul of this person. For me, I started my business with $10,000, right? So, and I wasn't able to raise money until I was in business for about 10 years. I know how it is to go hand and foot, to have to save or whatever to do this. Also, what's really interesting, we'll see how it works out, but you're hearing a lot about these VCs now who are going out and they're targeting smaller, these micro businesses. So I think there could be a role for that as well. The traditional Wall Street, I don't think much is going to come from that. I think these opportunity zones could work. But again, the connections aren't there, right? So you do have companies that move in and take advantage of the tax breaks. They might hire a few locals to do some things here and there, but not to teach them, right? So even those things have to be pushed a lot harder.
But even we're talking about this at a time where, we're still in the midst of dealing with the pandemic, and we know how many businesses of all kinds have been impacted by this over the last 2 years, small, large, et cetera. And a lot of those are businesses owned by people of color.
Yeah, no, that's true. By the same token, though, we're on a pace on new business startups that began in late 2020 and erupted. I mean, the amount of new businesses that are opening right now, some out of necessity. It's not unlike the Great Depression. A lot of the best businesses that still exist today were born out of that period. Someone may have lost a job and said, okay, I'm going to go for it. There's no doubt that while it's a negative on one hand, the irony has been that it's actually been a positive in the sense that a lot of people have said, okay, I'm going to take my shot right now.
We're joined by Charles Payne of the Fox Business Channel. I guess, what then are you most hopeful for in terms of the opportunity that may come down the path here over the next few years? What do you focus on the most that hopefully will start to turn a corner?
First and foremost is desire, a desire to do it and a belief you can do it. It's got to begin with the individual. And that I am very hopeful of. Like I said, it's amazing. When I talk to these young kids, my son is 25. When I talk to these young kids and what they want to do, what they want to achieve is so amazing. They grew up listening, like the music they listen to It's all about hard work, hustling, ownership. You know, you listen to these rappers, right? If you listen to Drake, if you listen to Jay-Z, if you listen to some of these others, their lyrics about who spends the most time in the studio.
Yeah.
They're not, and before it used to be like, hey, you know, I'm repping a champagne company. Now it's like, no, I own a champagne company. The mentality is absolutely amazing. So now you've got to do is to layer with that mentality is to say, by the way, there's a lot of avenues. We don't need everyone bunching up in 2 or 3 lanes. Let's get all the lanes. There's a lot of lanes. Let's go down all of them. And that's the big start.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because that idea of one's brand, I think, is really expanding across all kinds of different platforms. And I think it's something that in many cases for a lot of small businesses, maybe they don't necessarily think that their business is a brand, but it really is when you think about the community and working with the people in your neighborhood and having that success level, even in your own backyard.
No, I agree. You know, we made it a point during the holidays, my wife and I, to go to a couple of stores in Harlem, you know, in part because of the brand, right? There's this one woman, she's got this shop and she sells all these toys, and some are cute, some are unique, you know, but she's building this brand, right? And then a couple of the restaurants. So, but they know it. I mean, these kids know it. They know it. They watch the TikTok videos. They listen to the music. They talk to their friends. And it's amazing what they want and believe they can get.
I know you are also somebody that is very much an advocate for education. And if you can take a moment to touch on how that component is also going to play into this growth and business opportunity for all kinds of different businesses.
Yeah, it's, you know, that is really, to your point, I pound a table on that. It's where I'm most worried, to be quite frank with you, and particularly kids who have to come through the public education system. I see it getting a lot worse. You know, I just see kids who are totally 100% unprepared. They're not prepared to go to college and not prepared for life, and they just sort of get moved along. So that's something that's going to have to change. And then in terms of application, I would love to see things come back like welding, right? When I was coming up, and we lived in New York and Harlem, and there was you had high school of printing, you had high school of auto shop, you had, all these different things, but you could come out and get a gig. You could really come out and go straight to work. I went to the High School of Art and Design, and my major was advertising art. I didn't go down that avenue, but to this day, the tools that I learned in high school served me every single day. So, so there's no doubt, listen, we talk about the STEM and all that kind of stuff, and that's important as well. But we cannot get these kids, we cannot graduate anyone who's going to be competitive where we don't have to import 100,000 technology workers every year if we don't start them with a more rigorous curriculum at the very beginning. You got to give them the tough stuff right out the gate. And there's some issues there. It's going to be harder for the kids to go home and say, hey, mom, can you help me with my homework? Because the mom may not have the education. They may not have a dad in the home. There's different things that have to be worked out, but they must be given the toughest curriculum out the gate.
Well, and the dynamic of the fact that college education, while valuable in many cases, is obviously seen at times as an economic barrier to moving forward. Believe it or not, the fact that so many students are coming out with so much debt that they're carrying right now. There are other opportunities and other options for a lot of individuals coming out of high school, other than college, to be able to lead them into a good career.
Absolutely. I think there's 1 million fewer kids who signed up for college in the last year than the year before. I mean, it's resonating, and people are weighing the pros and cons. And again, I think also, to be honest with you, I got to tell you, Dan, these kids are eager, man. They want to get out there. They want to rock and roll. Like sitting around in the classroom for 4 years, like, no, I'm wasting time.
Well, and especially with the social platforms, having that, can you imagine if you and I, when we were coming up through it, if we had those platforms, it would have made it so much easier for me as a journalist to be able to build my brand and for you as well.
Yeah. you get a website, you get marketing, you get accounting, all this stuff in a little bitty box is there for you. Like, I had to hire accountants. I had to do, you think in the last just 10 years, 5 years, how you can start a business off the shelf with a very little amount of money, have a beautiful looking website, some marketing. It really is amazing.
So let me ask you a last question then. From your perspective, in your business background then, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Black History Month, for the most part, I think of the overcoming. I always think of these towns, particularly after the Civil War, all of these Black towns that grew up out of nothing, and how former slaves built towns that had theaters, that had restaurants, that had refineries, that had all of these things without anyone teaching them, without anyone coaxing them, because they had to do it. And so, I want to build on that. I don't want to reflect as much. I'm more of a person that says, hey, let's applaud how far we've come and how short of a period of time. I think we're wasting a lot of money, time, energy. And by the way, probably the biggest, scariest issue when it comes to our situation is mental as well. This idea that the world is against you. I don't think we understand, like, when we hear this over and over and over again, whether it's from the president, from an elected leader, from a teacher, from your neighborhood, how much of an impediment that becomes. That becomes perhaps the largest impediment. It's hard to measure, but I'm telling you. So let's celebrate, acknowledge where we were, celebrate how fast we've gotten here, and work on how to go forward. That's what I think about when I think about Black history.
Charles, great to talk to you as always. Thank you for a few moments.
You got it, buddy. See you soon.
Thank you. Charles Payne, who you see on the Fox Business Channel each and every weekday.